Commander Zixthor of the Galactic Archaeological Institute had spent 3 decades studying ancient civilizations. He had deciphered the quantum scripts of the Velnari, translated the time-locked messages of the Chronos Collective, and even understood the 4-dimensional literature of the Tesseract poets, but the Ancient One's vault had stumped every species in the known galaxy for over 2,000 years. The symbols covering the massive door were elegant, flowing, and utterly incomprehensible. Zixthor's 4 eyes tracked across the inscriptions again, his chitinous fingers tracing patterns in the air as he tried every known linguistic framework, mathematical model, and even musical notation. Nothing worked. The vault sat on a dead world in the Epsilon sector, buried beneath kilometers of ice and stone. Inside, according to legend, lay the secrets of the ancients, the first spacefaring civilization, the ones who had seeded the stars with technology millennia before any current species had achieved fire. Every major power in the galaxy wanted access to whatever lay beyond that door. "Commander?" his assistant Corell chirped, her translator rendering her native clicks into standard. "The human has arrived." Zixthor's mandibles clicked in frustration. Humans, the newest species to stumble into faster-than-light travel, barely 3 generations removed from their single planet. The Galactic Council had invited them as a formality, assuming they'd contribute nothing but perhaps learn something valuable. Humans were notorious for their strange approaches to problems, their lack of respect for established protocols, and their baffling tendency to succeed through what they called winging it. The human who entered the excavation chamber was younger than Zixthor expected. Dr. Sarah Chen wore a standard exploration suit, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her brown eyes bright with curiosity behind her helmet's visor. "Dr. Chen," Zixthor said, his translator smoothing his natural hissing into standard. "Welcome. I must warn you, we have exhausted every conventional approach to this puzzle. The Viridian Enclave sent their best cryptographers. The synthesis uploaded the patterns into their collective consciousness. All have failed." Sarah stepped closer to the door, her movements graceful in the low gravity. "May I examine it directly?" "Of course, though I doubt you'll find anything 30 years of research has missed." Sarah approached the door, her helmet light illuminating the intricate symbols. They spiraled across the surface in complex patterns, geometric shapes interwoven with flowing lines, dots and dashes arranged in sequences that suggested language but followed no known grammatical structure. She stood there for several minutes, silent and still. Zixthor watched with barely concealed impatience. Behind him, representatives from 6 different species waited, some having traveled months to witness this historic moment. "These symbols make no sense," Sarah finally said, tilting her head to one side. "Yes, we've established that," Zixthor replied dryly. Sarah continued tilting her head, further and further until her helmet was nearly perpendicular to the ground. She took 2 steps to the right, then looked at the door again from her tilted perspective. "Oh," she said simply. "It's sideways." The chamber fell silent. "What do you mean, sideways?" Corell asked. Sarah straightened up and pointed at the door. "We've all been looking at it wrong. The ancients didn't orient their writing the same way we do. What we've been interpreting as horizontal text arranged in vertical columns is actually vertical text arranged in horizontal rows. The entire reference frame is rotated 90 degrees. Zixthor felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. In 30 years, across thousands of researchers, not one had considered that the fundamental orientation might be different. They had tried every language, every cipher, every mathematical system, but they had all assumed the basic spatial relationship between observer and text was universal. That's absurd," he muttered. "Why would anyone write sideways? Why does anyone write in any particular direction?" Sarah shrugged. "On Earth, different cultures wrote left to right to left, top to bottom. The Mongolian script runs vertically. Arabic runs right to left. It's arbitrary, based on the physical evolution of the species and their early writing implements." She pulled out a portable scanner and began photographing the door from her tilted perspective. "May I access your database of attempted translations?" Zixthor wordlessly transmitted the data to her device. Sarah fed it through a simple rotation matrix, transforming every recorded pattern by 90 degrees. The result appeared on the holographic display, and Zixthor felt his exoskeleton tingle with recognition. The symbols now formed clear, logical patterns, mathematical sequences aligned, Repeated elements suggested grammar. It was language, actual readable language. It's a mathematical cipher combined with positional notation, Sarah explained, her fingers dancing across her interface. The ancients used base 12 mathematics. Once you rotate the frame of reference and apply base 12 conversion, the patterns emerge. This symbol here? It's a prime number marker. This one indicates dimensional coordinates. And this, she paused, her eyes widening. This is an instruction manual, she whispered, for opening the door. The next hour passed in intense focus as Sarah worked through the translation, with Zixthor and the other researchers contributing their expertise to fill in gaps. The human's insight had cracked the foundation, but the actual translation required the combined knowledge of multiple species. When Sarah finally input the decoded sequence into the door's control panel, everyone stepped back. The massive vault door shuddered. Dust that had settled for thousands of years cascaded down its surface. Then, with a deep grinding sound that echoed through the chamber, it began to open. Light spilled out from within. Clean, white light that seemed impossible after so many millennia. Inside, rows upon rows of crystalline data storage units stretched into the darkness, each one pulsing with a soft inner glow. The secrets of the ancients, waiting to be discovered. Zixthor turned to Sarah, his mandibles forming what humans had learned to recognize as his species' equivalent of a smile. Dr. Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Archaeological Institute, I must ask, how did you think to rotate your perspective? Sarah grinned. My daughter does it all the time. She's 5. Last week she couldn't figure out a puzzle, so she turned the whole thing upside down and solved it immediately. Kids do that. They don't have fixed assumptions about how things should be oriented. She looked back at the open vault, its treasures now accessible after 2,000 years of mystery. Sometimes, she added, the newest perspective is the most valuable one. We humans haven't been doing this long enough to know what's impossible. As the research teams began cataloging the vault's contents, Zixthor realized something profound. The galaxy's ancient species had accumulated vast knowledge, sophisticated techniques, and centuries of experience. But they had also accumulated assumptions, unexamined beliefs about how things worked. The humans, young and inexperienced, brought something equally valuable: the willingness to tilt their heads and see things differently. Perhaps that was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, not just their unusual resilience or their chaotic creativity, but their fundamental inability to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. They simply hadn't been around long enough to learn what couldn't be done. And sometimes, Zixthor thought, that made all the difference.